I once thought there's a book I recommend. Professor Wen Taijun from Renmin University wrote a book called The Crisis of the 80s. Recently, the English version was renamed 10 Crises. It now covers events up to 2020, starting from 1948. He effectively explains how, in the past, well, from the founding of the country in 1949 up to today, nearly over 70 years of history, there's been an economic adjustment, or what we might call a crisis, almost every decade. But what exactly is the root cause of these crises? He provides a rather clear explanation. The source of these crises often comes from fiscal deficits. In other words, if there are problems with public finances, then a crisis is likely to occur. In his book, he provides a very thorough analysis of the causes behind the crises we've experienced over the past 70 or 80 years. He also offers excellent explanations for the social changes triggered by these causes, including shifts in social order and other societal transformations. Personally, I believe this explanatory framework is very solid. So, the first issue I want to discuss today is the fiscal issue. Just like many of us are passionate about studying what exactly? Studying monetary issues. We believe that currency is the most important issue at the intersection of a country's society, politics, economy, and daily life. But in a country like China, fiscal issues are often even more important. Fiscal issues are the most critical ones. You could say they are the kind of issue where a single move affects the whole body. Fiscal issues are the ultimate guarantor and, in fact, the final answer among all socioeconomic indicators. When the fiscal deficit becomes relatively large, you'll see a series of changes start to happen. Many of these changes are structural, and I would say that things may never return to the way they were before. Secondly, in many regions, fiscal issues arise, employees of enterprises and government departments, as well as civil servants and staff in public institutions, actually also face significant economic pressure. So what happens after fiscal problems emerge? There will be major structural changes, and these will have a structural impact on the development of society as a whole. We actually haven't paid enough attention to these structural impacts. Or you could say that most of our entrepreneurs don't really care about these issues, thinking that fiscal matters have nothing to do with them. But in reality, fiscal matters have a lot to do with you. At its core, fiscal policy is about the ability to collect taxes, and the stability of our currency has always been closely tied to our ability to collect taxes. So these structural changes will affect the long-term performance of our economy and our economic policies. So secondly, what other problems do these fiscal issues lead to? If we look at both supply and demand, the problems we're facing at this stage are, in essence, not about excess supply, but more importantly, about insufficient demand. How do we create effective demand? This brings up a very important issue, which is that the essence of economic life is expectation. How can we effectively manage expectations? How can we effectively build a consensus for development? How can we effectively turn expectations, positive expectations, into reality in our political and economic lives? How do we create and manage positive, hopeful expectations? This is absolutely crucial. So this brings us back to the first issue I mentioned earlier. Why are so many people confused at this stage? And why is there so little certainty about the future? Why is it that lying flat and involution have become such trendy things right now? It's not just young people, right? A lot of entrepreneurs are also trying to figure out how to either lie flat or get caught up in involution. So what does this mean? It means that managing expectations is extremely important. And this expectation management isn't just about posting something in our social media circle, or organizing a discussion forum, or even gathering 100,000 people for a big conference and approving 1.2 trillion yuan. None of these alone can effectively and completely solve the problem. Of course, all of these actions are very important and absolutely necessary. But what's even more important is that all members of society, individuals, businesses, and ordinary people, can genuinely feel that we are returning to the path of reform and opening up, refocusing on economic development as the central goal, and putting people first as the only true theme. Only then can development solve many problems. So we need to devote ourselves wholeheartedly to pursuing development and single-mindedly strive for a better future. If everyone focuses all their energy on generating income, creating jobs, creating value, generating tax revenue, and creating opportunities, then of course we also create a stable environment for social development. And what else do we create? We create stable social expectations, and in doing so, we are able to manage those expectations. Personally, I believe that stability comes from development, not from management. So I think this is the first issue: how to create effective demand, how to manage people's expectations, how to give everyone peace of mind, how to reassure people deep down, and how to incorporate all of this into our overall policy approach. Personally, I think we need to reach into the hearts of ordinary people and into the hearts of entrepreneurs even more. Deep down in people's hearts, we need to post a notice of reassurance. Simply using quantitative tools to manage the macroeconomy, to manage and guide expectations, and to create effective demand may not be enough, especially in the current special circumstances and under the tremendous downward pressure we're facing. So what do we need to do? We need to reaffirm our commitment to reform, rebuild social consensus, and refocus on economic development as our central task. This will also help us return to developing productive forces. We must once again let the market fully allocate resources according to the principles of a market economy, and we remain unwavering in ensuring that the market plays a central role in resource allocation. We need to establish rule of law and strengthen institutions. Only through these legal and institutional reforms, a renewed pledge to reform and opening up, can we move forward. What's most important in reform and opening up? It's loosening social restrictions. Reform and opening up is vital, and government's role must change. So what should it be? It should shift to providing public goods and services to society, right? We need to implement the streamlined administration, delegate power, improve regulation, and upgrade services reform, transforming the government's public functions. From the perspective of social development, we need to loosen restrictions on the economic system and social factors, free up value-creating elements, ease constraints on people's production and daily lives, liberate people's minds, and relax institutional limitations. In this way, it's just like what we did in 1978. We're returning to the essence of reform and opening up, with the main focus on loosening restrictions. As long as we loosen restrictions, free up society, unleash productivity, liberate our thinking, and remove barriers to progress, then I personally believe that positive expectations, confidence, and a sense of certainty will quickly return. So from this perspective, I'm actually not that pessimistic. I think everything is about action and reaction. When things reach an extreme, they will inevitably reverse. The economic downturn is already a certainty. We're in a phase of stepping down. The problems we're seeing now are also very prominent, and the fiscal pressure is enormous. On top of that, there are geopolitical conflicts, so the pressure we're facing right now is tremendous, including the situation in the Strait. This issue has become very obvious. Ever since we surrounded the Strait, the situation has been crystal clear. We can pull back at any time. It just depends on when we make up our minds. Making up our minds in this way, and the series of issues that such geopolitics will bring in the future, will all be factored into the personal calculus of entrepreneurs. If you include all of these multiple factors into your own life's equation and personal model, I personally think that our models and life algorithms will all become unbalanced and will have to be reassessed. Our business models, life algorithms, and even our career platforms, all of these will face a process of reevaluation and a return to the mean. So, our society as a whole is also going through a process of mean reversion. In the past, there was a period when things swung really far to the right, and now there's a phase where they're pulling sharply to the left. Whether it's to the left or the right, the whole society is essentially trying to return, I think, to a relatively neutral and rational path of development. This is the process of mean reversion in society. In this process, of course, because of the relationship between action and reaction, as we revert to the mean, our variance goes from large to small. This means that society as a whole may have to face the costs of social reform. For the process of mean reversion and rational progress in society, we have to pay a very high price. But is this price worth paying? Personally, I think it is necessary. I'm personally quite opposed to the idea of boiling a frog in warm water, so I believe that paying the price is a good thing. It's for the sake of our next generation, for the true establishment of a market economy system, for the creation of a society based on common sense, axioms, and conscience, and for building a truly modern national governance system and governance capacity. I think it's worth paying some costs now. The price we pay today is manageable compared to the unbearable cost we might have to pay in the future. So from this perspective, I'm actually quite optimistic.